My first hours of solo travel were spent in the bathroom stall in Dublin. I was completely overwhelmed by the reality of being alone. I didn't even know this journey would take me through 4 countries and eventually to Japan, where I'd learned a lesson about my own leverage that my white friends couldn't even access. My first solo international flight wasn't just a change of scenery, it was a total system shock. But I wasn't alone. At first, on the flight to Dublin, I met Molly. She was an older white woman sitting next to me, and despite the decades between us, the difference in our skin, we had this shared westernized culture that allowed us to mesh instantly. We faced delay after delay together, and I thought she could sense my nervous vibrations under the surface. This was my first time navigating the world on my own internationally, and she became my unofficial guide. She stayed with me through the arrival chaos, helping me decode the cultural norms I didn't even know existed. She explained the currency, which surprisingly was not euros yet, and walked me through the food selection I had never seen in my life. She gave me those unwritten tips of international travel that you can't find in a manual for a few hours. Molly was my safety net. But eventually, the overhead speaker called her flight, and she had to leave me behind. Suddenly, the bridge to the familiar was gone. I was standing in the middle of the terminal where I didn't just feel like a traveler. I felt like an exhibit. The weight of the culture I didn't understand started to press on me, and I wasn't just nervous. I was internalizing every look, every difference. I felt the need to shrink, to disappear. I ran to the nearest bathroom, and unfortunately it only had 3 stalls, and I locked myself in one, realizing my own journey before I had even begun. I could hear the line of women forming, their voices a blur of accents that felt like a wall I couldn't climb. I was hiding in the stall because for the first time I realized that out here no one was obligated to help me, and I had to find a way to help myself. I looked at that locked door and I realized, I'm not small. Why am I making myself uncomfortable just to avoid the possibility of others being uncomfortable with me? In that tiny 3-stall bathroom, I made a choice. I decided that from that moment on, I would never shrink myself again. I wouldn't hide who I was as a person of color to fit into someone else's standard of a traveler. I realized that my confidence isn't something I find in a new city. It's something I bring to a new city. Unlocked that door, walked past that line of women, and stepped back into the terminal. I didn't understand the currency yet, and the food still looked strange, but I wasn't hiding anymore. I was finally ready to be seen exactly as I am. Because the truth is, if you aren't comfortable being you'll never be comfortable anywhere in the world. And it was at that moment I was going to learn to be comfortable even if I was uncomfortable. Venice. I walked out of the bathroom stall in Dublin, promising I wouldn't hide again. But when I reached Venice, I realized hiding isn't always a choice. Sometimes the city itself makes you invisible. Venice felt like it was built for couples, romantic dinners, sunset gondolas, and weirdly enough, condom machines on a lot of corners. I was alone, and the city made sure I felt it. I spent hours in my overpriced hotel room trying to convince myself to go outside. Then I found a book about Black gondola men. Real people, real history, completely erased from the glossy postcard versions of Venice. It was ironic how this book found me. Why was this history hidden under all of the romance? Venice definitely helped shape empires, but it felt like those empires weren't interested in remembering everyone who helped build them. Florence. Florence made me look upward to the cathedrals, but it also forced me to see the shadows. There's a hidden privilege in being a spectator. I watched as fare evaders sprinted from the police on the train. Panhandlers were playing their accordions. That music, it filled the air with a beauty that felt borrowed. It reminded me that the aesthetic of Florence was often ignored, the people struggling just to stay within its borders. I learned on that train that graffiti here in Italy had its own language, that if you said and looked, you could better understand. I was surprised also with the cooking class in Florence and how comfortable I felt being there. With the history, the Medicis, all around me. All the stories I had ever read about or heard about. Dante's Inferno. It was all here. Florence was warm and I really enjoyed it. And surprisingly enough, in Pisa, and even though I had got left by the other solo female on my way to Pisa, it was alright because somehow, maybe it was someone looking out for me. They made sure that I was okay. I got there and I had an amazing experience with these travelers in Pisa. Florence will always be somewhere warm in my heart. If Venice was a ghost story of a race history, Rome was the opposite. It was loud, messy, very, very present. But I quickly learned that being seen isn't the same as being safe. I remember an older man on the bus offered a seat next to him. Kind, right? But the energy was totally off. He started making these sucky noises with his teeth. I moved immediately to the edge of the seat, as far away from him as possible, while holding all of my luggage with me. When we reached the station, he tried to kiss me, so I gave him one of those 2 kisses on the cheek, and then panicked and tried to slip out of the back door of the bus. But then I was immediately stopped by the police because apparently when tapping my card to pay for my bus ride, it hadn't actually gone through. Oopsies. Later, a man spotted me as a target for a scam, offering to help me with my ticket because I literally missed my train to Florence. When he realized I wasn't falling for it and saw I had nothing to give him, he just said, never mind, and walked off. Even the scammers in Rome have a code. It was a collision of intuition and reality. A reminder that being a person of color abroad means constantly reading the room, even when the room is moving at 30 miles an hour. Safety is never guaranteed in a city full of beauty, which is why the neighborhood I stayed in next felt like such a necessary breath of air. I wandered into a local market trying to find a SIM card and met a biracial local. He was Black and Italian, and he offered to show me the city in an area I didn't necessarily feel comfortable in exploring alone. And he gave me an experience I never would have had by myself. We ate real margarita pizza and danced at the square. He even taught me some Italian. It was the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't on my top 10 list, but it should have been. With some of the negative things I heard about Rome, no one could have prepared me for having dinner with a solo Venezuelan girl and the guy that she met from South Korea and chilling eating pasta while we all document our travels. And then don't let me forget my friend from Mexico because that was definitely an experience. We were just a tiny pocket of the world existing together. It reminded me that for every scammer on a train station, there's a moment of pure, unexpected connection waiting on the side street. Athens. Greece gave me a different kind of perspective. In Athens, I found myself sitting between 2 men from countries with long-standing tension. I tried to stay neutral, just listening. It was a rare moment where I was happy to meet people who didn't let their country's actions define their individual humanity. We sat in peace, but later that year, both their countries were all over the news. Seeing this headline months later felt like a physical weight. I wasn't looking at a map. I was looking at the faces I had sat with in the quiet bars in Athens. At the ancient site of Delphi, right before it closed, I found myself in a conversation that felt like a prophecy. A woman from the former Yugoslavia, myself, and a guy from Argentina stood together. She spoke with such haunting fear for the United States, saying that what happened to her country, the collapse, the division, could happen to America. We were standing in the shadows of the Oracle of Delphi, a place where people once came to hear the future. I didn't expect the prophecy to come from a woman who had already seen her own world fall apart. But not every moment was sweet. A jeweler shop owner in Plaka told me he wanted to take me to dinner and lay me down. Yeah, I got out of there expeditiously because I still don't know if it was my race, my age, or something else that made him feel so bold. This was not a moment to be a fly on the wall, and so, yeah, that was a no. Still, Athens balanced it with the kindness, like the grandmas at the airport who gave me their numbers and told me all the stories of their lives and different cities I should visit. They were so warm and welcoming, telling me to visit them the next time I come back. Albania. In Albania, the warnings returned. A guy from Dubai told me I should come visit there instead because it was safer. Ironically, not long after that conversation, Dubai was on the news for its own safety issues. Then a white man from the West warned me there were places in Albania I wouldn't be accepted. In my head, I questioned what made him have that experience, because usually the world we see is the world we project. Albania ended up surprising me with the kindness from young women sharing their culture to grandmas helping me when I was stranded. I still don't know if it was the world or if it was me, but Europe forced me to recalibrate. I realized that traveler doesn't quite fit me anymore, especially looking at the world through my anthropological lens. After everything I've shared today, I've realized I have become something else. an Ethnovant. I've stopped just visiting places and started seeing the unique leverage we all carry as outsiders. I've learned that the world we see is often just the world we project. But now I want to hear from you. If you had to choose, would you rather be invisible in a beautiful city like Venice or highly visible in a place that challenges you? Let me know your choice in the comments and I'll be there responding. And if you think these 4 countries were a journey, wait until you see how this perspective helped me hack Japan. Are you ready for that story? Hit subscribe and join the Ethno-Advantage journey. We're just getting started. Until next time, bye!